Oftentimes in our lives, we have more than one dream. And the question is, can we accomplish all those dreams or not? And once in a while, things converge that makes those dreams happen at the same time. And that's what our conversation is about today with Diane Kappa. Diane, glad to have you here with me today.
Thank you.
And Diane, you experienced something very similar. You had a couple of dreams that seemed to come together about the same time.
Yeah, I call it my two-part dream. The first part was to live in Europe, and the second part was to be my own boss. And, well, doing a big move like moving to Europe, obviously, I wasn't going to have a job when I got there. So being my own boss came hand in hand with moving.
Kind of forced it upon you, really.
Yeah. And the way my dream started was I traveled a lot in college. My husband, he did Peace Corps. So we both kind of had a travel bug already in us. And we traveled a lot together. And then at some point, I want to say it was probably in 2004, we started thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we lived somewhere long enough to not feel like tourists, to be able to immerse ourselves in the culture, make friends, and really kind of have a day-to-day experience rather than being in a city for 2 weeks, seeing everything that we could and then leaving.
Right.
So that's kind of how that dream surfaced.
So Steve, as I recall, got the job that then took you all to Hungary, right?
No, not at all.
Is that right? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in 2004, we both sort of started thinking and talking, like, we sort of daydreamed, I guess, like, wouldn't it be cool if we could move to Europe? And then in 2006, my mom passed away. And that was a real pivotal point in my life for, I would say, all of my decision making.
Right.
She died quite young. She was 54. And after her passing, I remember hearing my parents always plan for retirement. Like, when we retire, we're going to travel. When we retire, we're going to do this. And I thought to myself, why not do it now? You don't know if you're going to have the energy, the time, the finances to be able to do those things that you keep planning for 25 years from now. So anyway, so that happened. And after a lot of planning, Steve and I had quit our jobs in August of 2008, got on a plane in September and landed in Budapest, September 11th, 2008, with no jobs.
With no jobs? Oh, I didn't realize.
No jobs. We had 4 days, I think, rented in a bed and breakfast. And after that, we had no idea what we were going to do. So
That's a bold move.
Well, so that's sort of the simple story. But what people don't know or realize is that we really planned. We met with a financial advisor and said, okay, we want to be able to move to Europe, quit our jobs, move to Europe, live without jobs for 3 months because we thought, we might not find jobs and it might take quite a while.
Okay.
And then let's assume that we fail and we have to move back to Seattle and look for jobs again because we've just quit our jobs. So we wanted to have enough finances to be able to support all that and not be too stressed out over having to take the first job that came along or just, the stress of not having enough money to live. So yes, we had met with a financial advisor years before we moved, and we had made changes in our life to save money, save money, save money. And then when we decided to move, we sold everything but our house. We tried to sell that too, but it was 2008. So housing market it was just starting to decline.
Right.
So so we packed up what we had and moved to Budapest and started our life there.
So you had this dream for some time, obviously you talked about it, and then you spent several years, it sounds like, planning and saving and planning out what was going to happen. So you had the safety net. So you had a buffer of time. You could live for 3 months without having to worry about income and so forth. And should you not find some of that time period, be able then to pick up and fly back home, so not be stranded in Europe, without any source of income or any way to get home or whatever.
And Seattle's an expensive city. And so the idea of what if we did have to come back and neither of us had jobs? And, the idea of moving back into Seattle without jobs was a little stressful. So that's where I kept saying, let's just have enough money to to hold us here if we're going to have to go out and search for jobs all over again.
Yeah, there you go. Sometimes fear is a great motivator in a positive way. Right?
Exactly.
So what made you believe that this is going to work out when you headed to Hungary?
I mean, if it didn't work out, then we tried and we would make other plans. Or, what if we didn't like it? What if we lived there for 6 months and we hated it and then we wanted to come back and we never wanted to travel again? I mean, you don't know till you try. And so I don't know if we really believed if it would work or didn't believe it would work. We just kind of took the leap and kind of went with it. And we had always told ourselves that we were going to be gone for about 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And we already knew that because Steve was in Peace Corps, so he kind of already knew that, we should maybe not come back to the States for 1 year because it takes about a year to kind of like acclimate. We're going to have some frustrating times. We're going to want to pack up and move because we're frustrated with the postal system or getting visas or, healthcare, all those necessities that you need. And I guess because we were realistic about that, things really worked out great.
Well, it sounds like to me you went in with, given Steve's experience in the Peace Corps, having lived abroad for a number of years in some other countries, you had that experience in your portfolio, if you will, of what it's going to take to live there and things you had to solve, like you mentioned, healthcare or figuring out the postal system and housing and so forth. But you had this positive attitude that said, well, let's give it a year, let's give it a shot. It may be frustrating at times. Did it not frustrate you?
Oh, yeah. I remember there was one day Steve said, okay, you've been in bed. It's 1:00. Are you going to stay in bed all day? And I said, I am. I'm going to stay in bed all day and I'm going to pout. And tomorrow I will get out of bed and try all over again. And I think it was probably, we were a month in and like buying bread was just such a challenge because, we don't know the language. We just started language lessons, which, as you know, Hungarian is not an easy language.
No, it's not.
Thank you does not sound anything like thank you. And then, dealing with those day-to-day frustrations, there was just one day I was just like, no, I'm going to lay in bed all day and pout. And tomorrow I'll get out of bed and I will go buy bread and things will be better. But today I'm just taking the day off. He's like, okay. So yeah, it wasn't always rosy.
No, but you stayed longer than a year too, though, right?
Yeah, just under 4.
Under 4 years.
And Steve found a job within a month. And then this is where the second part of my dream comes in. I started, I don't know if it was that, as you said, that bold move of moving overseas, but somehow things that always scared me or were roadblocks didn't seem to be roadblocks anymore. Like, for example, there was an art agent in New York who, for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, every time I would go to this trade show, I would see his booth. And it was like, the biggest booth. There was always a swarm of people around. The artwork on the walls was fantastic. And I always thought, I want to work for him. And I worked for 3 other reps in the middle of, seeing his booth and really wanting to work for him. And then finally getting up the courage to call him and say, hey, will you take a look at my portfolio? And that happened while we were living in Hungary because I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I mean, I just moved to a foreign country and I don't even speak the language.
Right.
What's holding me back from asking this guy who I think is like, his artists are amazing? The worst thing he can say is no.
So why were there obstacles before? What were the obstacles that were holding you back?
Oh, I'm not good enough. I don't have the talent to work. All those inner negative voices that I think everybody has.
Absolutely.
Some people are better at quieting them than others, but just that he was I put him up on this pedestal and I just thought his agency was so cool that there would be no way that they'd be wanting to work with me.
Right.
And I reached out and within 24 hours, he's like, yeah, I love your work. Let's talk. And so
seriously. Yeah.
And so that was sort of the beginning of working for him. And now I license my art. So I've got a bunch of other clients as well. Mm-hmm. And I still work for him. He's my number one client.
Oh, that's
and
great.
We've now become very good friends. And when he listens to this, he'll probably laugh to know that I was like admiring him from a distance.
I want to talk about your work just a little bit. You're a surface designer, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Describe what that is, please.
So I design print and pattern for anything from stationery products, wallpaper, carpets, dishes, clothing, anything that you see pattern on, I draw. And then I work with the manufacturer in producing it. So
Okay, that's cool. So you're in Hungary now, and you've got time. You had nothing to lose. You reached out to this gentleman in New York. He loved your portfolio. So that launched you into doing your service design work full time then.
yeah, I mean, my background, I worked for Nordstrom for 11 years doing textile design.
Okay.
So I had a lot of knowledge and training through college, and then working at Nordstrom, I learned a ton there. So I already had the knowledge. It was just a matter of, I guess, building up the courage and then taking the leap of trying it. And yeah, so it's all, sometimes I have to pinch myself. I can't believe that I do what I do because I can't imagine doing anything else.
That's lovely. I'm curious though, you said buying bread was a struggle in Hungary. How hard was it to find the materials you needed to do your drawing and painting and so forth?
It was hard, but it was also hard to cook because you can't find the spices you're used to or the utensil that you used all the time before. I mean, little things like that. And you don't know how to ask, like, where do you sell a garlic press? I mean,
Right.
so in some ways, it was the perfect place for me to start my business because I had all these big ideas of things I wanted to create. And I wanted all these tools because working at Nordstrom, I had access to all kinds of things. And so really all you need is a pencil and paper and then a computer eventually. And then when I made trips home, I brought back paints and brushes that were better quality than what I could find in Hungary. So,
Okay. But you started with the tools you had available, pencil and paper.
yeah, I mean, you don't need a fancy anything. Really. I mean, you need a good computer, especially if your clients are living in a different country, and a scanner. I mean, other than that, I made do with what I had. And then in that process, you also learn how to use other tools that maybe you wouldn't have thought to try. Don't ask me what, because I won't be able to think of one right now. But
That's great. In this process, so moving abroad and starting out on your own with your own company happened about the same time, within a couple of months of each other and everything going on. What were some of the obstacles you encountered? What was the hardest part of moving forward? I mean, besides language issues in Hungary, for example.
well, business-wise, I think things took so much slower than I wanted. I wanted everything now. And even I think this year is the first time where I'm like, okay, things are actually moving a little too fast. Can we slow it down just a bit? So I think just things going slower than I had wanted. And I think that was really the biggest challenge because even though all my clients were overseas, I'd have conference calls, at 9:00 at night, but nobody seemed to mind because we have Skype.
Right.
And as long as I was accessible during their work hours, which I always made sure that I was, because I didn't want them to ever think, well, what's the time in Hungary? I just wanted them to call me because I didn't want that to be an obstacle for them. So, yeah, did I answer your question?
That's
In a roundabout way?
No, that's it. I mean, it's you're dealing with a different set of issues, in a foreign land, and you're trying to do business primarily based out of the U.S., right? Most of your clients in the U.S., as I recall, and how do you deal with those types of issues and challenges? And just curious on how you overcame those. So yeah, that's cool. Any surprises along the way? Anything that surprised you that you've encountered?
I thought it would be more of an issue that I was living in a different country, and it wasn't. Actually, the first couple clients I never met them face to face until years later. So I thought that was going to be a challenge. But with Federal Express, UPS, and scanning an email, it's amazing how easy it is to work from anywhere in the world.
Right. And how about any surprises, now that you're running your own company compared to having worked at Nordstrom's before?
I don't know. I guess good surprises in the sense that I love all my clients. I mean, that's probably the number one benefit of having my own business is I won't take on a project that either doesn't interest me or if I don't feel like I have some kind of connection with the person or company. So everything that I've taken on, I feel passionate about and I like the people that I'm working with. So I think that's why I totally love what I'm doing because all the people I work with, and I have a number of clients, they're fantastic. So maybe that's kind of a surprise to me.
Nice.
That, yeah, I've got great people that I'm working with. So there's no drama in my business life.
That's unusual. That's great.
Yeah. So
that's cool. Well, so again, you had two dreams that came together at the same time, living abroad and starting your own company. What advice do you have for other people that are wanting to pursue their dreams or their goals?
I have 3 bits of advice. Daydream a lot. I daydream often. I don't know, maybe all creative people do, but I really daydream a lot. Daydream about things that are maybe not achievable, at least not this time in my life.
Okay.
Plan, and then be really flexible when your plan doesn't go as planned.
Okay. All right.
And then I heard this quote one time, and I just love this. Opportunities are easily lost while waiting for perfect conditions. And I truly believe that.
That's a great bit of advice.
So don't push your dreams to, well, someday, or maybe in 5 years. Why not today?
Excellent. Diane, this has been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for Expelli, I am Dennis Hodges. Dream, believe, do. Before you go, if you'd like a transcript of this podcast, please go to expelli.com. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to write me at dennis@expelli.com, or you can leave comments on expelli.com in the blog or contact areas. Finally, please follow us on social media. On Facebook at facebook.com/expelli, and on Twitter where I am at Dennis Hodges. Thanks.